Higher ed is different in that security teams share a lot of information to help each other. They share on threats, on configurations and things like, that you would like, how do I do this? And because there's a lot of similarity in the tools that we have across higher ed from a security perspective. And the community across institutions is very tight-knit as well.
This is a Security Weekly production. Security Weekly is a resource of Cyber Risk Alliance.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative and Google Chrome Enterprise is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership with one of the contributors to my latest book, the #1 best-selling CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, as well as from other top CISOs and cybersecurity thought leaders. Listen to previous CISO Stories episodes at securityweekly.com/CSP. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC or visit cyberleadersunite.com. I'm your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome Lorna Koppel, CISO and Director of Information Security at Tufts University.
I ended up here through a series of opportunities. And what has attracted me to stay is I absolutely love the challenges and the growth in cybersecurity.
Well, what sort of growth and challenges have intrigued you the most over the years?
I love doing puzzles. And I think security is like doing a puzzle. And depending on the institution you're in, what their needs are, how you tailor things to the environment, the threat environment, things are always changing, both from who you're servicing, from your institution, as well as the compliance, as well as the threats and the controls. So it keeps you agile and having to want to explore and learn and grow and literally put pieces of a puzzle together.
Well, you've been a successful CISO in different companies, and now you're in the higher education role. So tell us a little bit about that. How is, higher education different from other types of CISO type roles?
Well, from my background, I've been in multiple different industries. And when I had an opportunity to move into higher ed, I'm like, oh, it's just the same as all the rest. I mean, as a CISO, we got to protect the data. We got to be compliant. We got to enable business. I mean, those things are, the same no matter, what industry you're in. However, higher ed also has a lot of uniqueness to it. And the concepts of how complex the environment is, the breadth of things that you get involved with and you need to protect and enable, the variety of regulations, the variety of resources, just leads to a lot more complexity than I think a lot of people. I mean, the complexity is on the order of managing a small city or, dealing with a mega multinational corporation that has multiple different business lines.
So what makes it such a complex environment?
So some of the challenges include things like very different constituents, very different business needs. We have the teaching vertical and the things that we need to do to obviously support teaching and learning. We have a lot of research, and the research needs are very different and can be very different in and of themselves. We have a lot of small projects. We have a lot of very big projects. You have the scholarly aspect of how to support, the scholarly development. And, like Tufts has multiple libraries that, collect a lot of materials and generate a lot of materials. And you have, you have limited resources. So there's a lot of different things, just kind of a lot of moving parts. And so how do you put the right amount of resources to the right things that are absolutely needed at the time? And, as we look at the other part that's challenging, on one hand, we don't buy a lot of tools, But on the other hand, we're leading edge on having to deal with accessibility and supporting gender identity and dealing with the complexities of identity and the diverse set of identities that we have with all of our different constituents. That it gets quite, because you can imagine, just trying to manage identity alone is pretty difficult.
How are those, when you say the diverse set of identities, how, give me an example of what are you dealing with all these different identities?
So we have a lot of, obviously we have the people that we pay. We have our staff, we have our faculty that we know about, that faculty and staff. We have the students that are registered. We get into challenges. It's like, well, what defines a student? How do you know when they're full-time, part-time? We also have lots of affiliations. We bring people in that may teach a course every 2 years. We have loose affiliations or strong affiliations with researchers who collaborate and across multiple institutions. And you can have, as a person, you can have multiple identities. I'm a staff member. I could teach a course, and I could also be taking a course. And how do you manage that and the life cycle? Who owns what my status is? Am I active as all three of those or just one of those? So, and then we have clinics. We have a lot of dental clinics we service in the state, and we have partnerships with both our dental school and our medical school. So we'll have faculty that are teaching and guiding those clinical students, but then they're also, so they're teaching for us, and yet our students are working for them. So there's a lot of complexity around identity.
It's interesting. Actually, this morning I was grading papers because I teach for Northwestern University. I teach an IT risk management course, a cybersecurity leadership course, and every year I have to go back in and read. It's always a big thing with the logins and did it expire, because you're not this continuous employee. I teach in the spring quarter each year, but I don't teach the rest of the year, and so
you totally get it.
Yeah. How long do you keep people on the system? In those environments,
it can be challenging. You don't know. And then getting an authoritative answer is really difficult. So, people taking leaves of absence, people going on sabbatical, just their periodic work with the university, can be quite a challenge. And then you add to it another dimension, which is, our students and our community has a lot of diverse identities for themselves. So one person may want to be called certain pronouns and certain name in a certain situation, and different pronouns and different identities and first names in other situations. And how do we support that? And that, both from just the general identity management and managing gender preferences and pronouns and things like that, accessibility, is bleeding edge when it comes to the rest of the world. Most companies don't deal with this on the depth and level that we have, and most tools can't handle it. So it gets quite difficult to support, people as they're looking at their own, how they see themselves and what their identity should be.
So you're saying that the same student would want to be called a he in one context and a she in another context? Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it may depend on the environment on which they're presenting themselves. And, some situations, they may not have formally changed their identity, and with certain groups, and others, they're more comfortable in a situation to be called something else. And we want to be highly respectful of what is supporting their needs.
Very, very interesting. I know I was in a presentation not long ago, and they were looking at just the inferences that you can draw today by what's kept in the systems, where you have the spouse's name has always been associated in somebody's system. Maybe it's for insurance purposes, and you have a spouse's name. well, when Lisa has Susie as the spouse's name, now you can draw this inference that you couldn't before. So are you having to manage those types of things too, and who can see what sorts of information, or is it not getting down to that level yet?
So there's a couple different aspects to that. So when I think about what you said with access to that information, there's the traditional, only those that need to know should be seeing the data. And certainly when you're dealing with personal information, that's critical. And the other part is that there may be information that you don't want, depending on the tool and who it is, you may want some people to see it and some other people to not. And so it can be both an institutional choice and a personal choice, which is very hard to handle technically across multiple ecosystems.
The article this podcast is based upon can be viewed in the best-selling cybersecurity leadership book, CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers. So when you look at like the differences between the types of individuals you have in the system, and you look at, say, researchers versus teachers, do you see a difference in how much control they want to have and access to information that they want to have?
Oh, yes. From teaching, if you're only, and only, that's a big deal. But if your main priority is to teach a class, there's not a whole lot that you have access to or you need access to. And the needs that you have are very prescriptive. You should know, we know you need access to learning management. We know that you're going to need to be able to post grades. There's some tools that you're going to probably want that we don't support, things like that. You come to the researchers and, they're doing research which is not defined. And the goal is to be working on things that others haven't considered, haven't studied. And the range of what a researcher, they could be working on a small data set that they get from, a federal agency, that they're just doing some basic analysis on generally public data, to those that are building out complex labs that have lots of cells and frogs and all kinds of beings that they need to keep alive to, run cellular analysis after, multi-million-dollar grants, so there's a wide range. And we also have students that need to do research, and students don't get our managed devices. So, but yet they may be dealing with data that has privacy regulations associated because they're pulling data from another country. So the diversity of what the researchers need and understanding, and, they're often designing their research based on what they know and what technology and tools they like to use. So that can make a lot more challenging when it comes to, are we upholding the privacy? Are we handling the data properly? Is the access secured? And also, are they able to do their work in the field? So it is very different when you're dealing with the research side. And I love supporting the research community, but it is a labor of love.
Mm-hmm. So I have to bring this in here because everybody seems to be talking about AI today, and how are you dealing with the idea that students could be using things, some of the generative AI tools to generate their papers, and what's your approach to should that be allowed, or how do you detect that if they generate a paper using those things?
So that's the quintessential question, obviously, in higher ed, is that a lot of both writing papers, writing code in computer science, it is stretching the faculty's ability to kind of think about how do they grade and what criteria they use. One of the things from an IT perspective that we've tried to encourage the concept of what can you do with generative AI to alter and update your teaching methods and your grading methods, so that you can reap benefits and maybe upscale what you're doing from a teaching perspective, because your students can work on the fundamentals outside of using generative AI to help them learn, help them grow, help them code, help them learn some basics. I don't have an answer, but I'm not an educator on what do you do on the grading side. And I think this is, there's a lot of smart faculty that I'm sure are thinking about this, and hopefully are thinking about how to both use it and truly be able to measure the progress of a student.
Yeah, and I've heard some people suggest where generative AI really falls down is it doesn't really have the critical thinking capabilities. So if you want something that dumps out a bunch of facts, it's great for that, and to give a head start of, oh, well, maybe I should address this. But then asking questions, it changes the way the educators have to ask the questions, so that they're taking the knowledge that maybe an AI could generate, but then applying it to a situation, so that the AI would have difficulty doing that. So you can actually separate and start to see what those differences are.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the benefits with the generative AI. It can kind of give you a baseline to start from, but it's not the finished product. And it can give you ways to kind of maybe organize some thoughts, but you to really get at the knowledge and the development, you got to put a lot of effort into it. And the question is, I think I would expect that faculty generally can start to see the difference between the quality of what their students are producing. It either goes up or goes down significantly. And it goes up significantly and it's really well thought out. Then it may have started with generative AI, but it was probably finished by somebody really putting some critical thinking. And I think that's what we really want, is to teach the critical thinking.
Yeah, and I think of things like I know in writing my last book, the CISO Compass book, that what would I have done without Google, right? Because it's like, oh, I need a resource that I want some statistics on this, or I want to back this up with something, and so you're there all the time, and this is just Google on steroids, really. But I didn't produce the book by Googling something and then printing that's the difference. You have to apply the critical thinking in the middle there. So what about, this skills shortage that we have in recruiting, and how do you get people into university environments, and, what's your approach for that?
So to attract people, one of the things that, like any position at any industry vertical, is, what is their ambitions? What is their skills? What are their motivations? What's their critical thinking? So, the basic skills that you look for that you can grow from. When you get to hiring into higher ed, the other part is finding people that you can appeal to the broader benefits that higher ed gives you. And so, like I mentioned earlier, the puzzles, the challenges, the diversity, there's a lot of different things that you can get exposed to, and appealing to people that are interested in that, appealing to some of the benefits, being able to take classes, being exposed to many cultural things that you for free that you wouldn't get otherwise. And usually the benefits, are really good. It doesn't mean that the salary is super competitive, but there's a lot of other benefits that balance. And so it takes looking for somebody that's going to get excited about working in this environment and giving back. And I guess a lot of it is about, do people really want to give back? Do they want to solve challenges and enable the business? And do they get charged up by doing that? And once you can appeal to that, people tend to be like, yeah, this is really cool. And they see how much we really care about our employees. So that helps a lot.
Yeah. I've heard this before from other like governmental agencies as well, that it's about the mission, and have to attract people that way, but then people end up staying in some of those institutions for a long, long time.
Yes, that is true. That is true. I love it in higher ed. I have a hard time imagining going to another industry. I love it at Tufts. I love it. I love being in higher ed. It's the community alone. And that's the other cool thing that I try to appeal to people when I hire them is higher ed is different in that security teams share a lot of information to help each other. They share on threats, on configurations and things like, that you would like, how do I do this? And because there's a lot of similarity in the tools that we have across higher ed from a security perspective. And the community across institutions is very tight knit as well. So that, you're really part of a community and you can have a lot of relationships with people that are very rewarding.
Well, Lorna, this has been very helpful. I always like the mission of higher ed is it's why I teach. But I have like a small slice of higher ed, and I think just being around the students and is kind of mind blowing in some ways. You just see how brilliant they are, and some of the you give an assignment and they come back with their papers, and you're like, wow, this is really incredible stuff you're writing. So I think it's a great environment to be around. And so what sort of advice would you give to emerging CISOs, current CISOs, experienced CISOs as they're going down this journey and thinking about higher ed as a career path?
So one of the things, the main advice that I would give is take time to step back on a routine basis and think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. You have to pick and choose in any institution, whether you have enough resources to do the things you need to do. And higher ed gives you an opportunity to say continuously, am I focusing on the most emergent thing that the university needs right now? And that means taking time to step back and think, which is really hard because all of us want to solve problems and we bury our heads deep in the day-to-day work. So my advice is take time, step back, think, and think about what you're really doing for the institution and is it the right things?
That's really great advice.
Thank you.
Thanks much, Lorna. Thanks for taking the time.
My pleasure.
Are you constantly thinking about how to keep your enterprise as secure as possible? Get to know Chrome Enterprise, the browser that will secure your organization without the added expense and complexity of additional browsers. Its simplified management features will free up your team to focus on critical security tasks that can be overlooked because of time and attention it takes to manage other solutions. Don't settle for a browser that compromises your organization. Visit securityweekly.com/Chrome now to start protecting your organization like never before.